Okay, good morning. Come on, good morning. There we go. All right, they're alive. Greetings, my name is Andrew Hone, President and CEO of the Portland Metro Chamber, your Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for being here today. We promised absolutely serene and perfect weather, and we have delivered. So thank you for joining us as we bring together the four contenders vying to be the Democratic nominee for Oregon's 3rd Congressional District. So we look forward to hearing from these candidates today and their unique perspectives. But before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank the people that really do make this possible. First, to you, all of our members who power the Chamber, we appreciate your support. And we appreciate the support of the sponsors that actually make this series possible. So I'm going to shout out the entirety of them, and then I'm going to welcome a few to the stage. So first and foremost, Alaska Airlines, the Portland Tribune, George Fox University, and U.S. Bank. Let's give them all a big warm round of applause. U.S. Bank has been a steadfast, there you go, use words, folks, has been a steadfast supporter and all-important figures of the Chamber for many years, 95 years to be exact, and we are grateful for their support. Another deserving shout-out goes to our forum sponsor, George Fox University, Oregon's nationally recognized Christian university committed to providing students the best level of engagement and global opportunities to learn and serve with a supportive community. And of course, the Portland Tribune. First, it's important to put a spotlight on local journalism, and we so appreciate the work of the Trib. We want to thank Brian Monahan and his entire team, and remember to please support the media and be a subscriber. And with that, I would like to welcome our Forum Series sponsor, Alaska Airlines. We are so pleased to have Harry Chima, who is in the house. Harry is both on the board of the Chamber and also the Public Affairs and Program Manager at Alaska Airlines. So please join me in welcoming Harry Chima.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm going to be reading my remarks off my phone, which my wife would yell at me for, but I forgot to print them out. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. As Andrew mentioned, my name is Harry. I'm the Public Affairs Manager for Alaska Airlines, handling our community relations with the business community in the Northwest. I'm eager to hear how our candidates today envision the 3rd District evolving and how they intend to support local businesses and diverse communities that they represent. Thank you to the candidates for being here and sharing your perspectives on how to best serve Portland's people. The Portland metro area is a vibrant community of small businesses, including many in the food and beverage sectors, and those unique businesses inspire Alaska's onboard service. We partner with several Portland area small businesses to give our guests a taste of the very best that Portland and the Pacific Northwest have to offer. Alaska has a long-held commitment to the people of Portland. As the largest carrier in the city for more than 20 years, we take pride in serving this community, and it was actually the first community south of Seattle that we served. Following the careful work by our skilled maintenance and engineering teams to safely return our 737-9 MAX planes back into service, we've been ramping up our service to and from Portland to give guests more choice and more convenience. We're excited that starting this summer, there will be an average of 100 daily departures from Portland, more than our pre-pandemic flight levels. Our capacity will increase by 25%, and we're adding more daily departures to sought-after destinations for all of our Portland guests, bring our total number of nonstop destinations to 53 this year, which again is more than pre-pandemic numbers. The entire Alaska team is grateful for everyone in this room, the business community, the civic community, and all the leaders that are working hard to restore Portland to what it was and what it can become. Alaska is honored to be your hometown airlines, and I'm excited to hear what our representatives have to say today. Thank you.
Harry's like the coolest board member ever. Okay, so let's get into it. We have an exciting debate in store for everyone today. After serving in Congress for 28 years, it's hard to even to think that sort of tenure. Earl Blumenauer has announced that he is retiring at the end of his current term, which means Oregon's 3rd District will have its first open election in 3 decades. We have some very qualified candidates that are here today, and they are ready to dive deep into their perspective and plans for shaping the region we call home. And I just want to make sure that everybody also understands people who run for office, it's a serious commitment. This is not a fun thing. This is a very serious endeavor. And I say it because we sometimes lose sight of the fact that there are sacrifices people have to make to be in public office these days. So just please be aware and remember to thank people who put themselves forward. They may not win the election, but they are striving to make our communities better. And we appreciate the fact you've all put yourselves out there and taken that sacrifice. So we thank you for that. I would also just remind people that this is one of many consequential elections this year. The entire Multnomah County Commission, with the exception of the chair, is running for re-election or to be newly elected. And then in November, all 12 city council offices, the mayor, and the auditor will be running for re-election, or I should say, for a newly formed, very interesting type of government. If you don't vote and you're unhappy, it's on you. So please do not forget to vote. May 21st is the primary deadline. If you do not vote, and if you do not tell your neighbors and your friends and your family to vote, again, do not complain. Vote. So with that, please join me in welcoming someone who we are just thrilled to have as our moderator, because he just does an outstanding job, both in his day job and whenever he comes to our forum series, to be able to keep the absolutely positive civic tone that we all need. So with that, please join me in welcoming moderator Ken Boddy from KOIN 6 News.
Thank you, and good morning. Looking forward to moderating this debate for this very important position, representing the state of Oregon in the 3rd Congressional District. We'll begin by running through the debate rules, and we'll get through this rather quickly since we don't have a lot of time. Each candidate will get 2 minutes for their opening statement. From there, we'll jump into 6 debate questions, 7 if time allows today. The candidate speaking order has been predetermined by the Portland Metro Chamber through a random drawing prior to this event. We'll rotate through that order with each question. Each candidate will have then 1 minute to answer the questions that come from me here at the podium. I've been given the opportunity to ask each candidate one follow-up question during the course of the debate. Not guaranteeing that I will use that depending upon how time goes, but I do have that option, and that part is unscripted. There will be an opportunity for candidates to elaborate or clarify their positions. We'll conclude the debate with 2-minute closing statements, and then we'll reverse the speaking order from the opening remarks for the closing statement. With that being said, I'd like to welcome our candidates to the stage. First of all, Maxine Dexter, Oregon State Representative of House District 33. Sushila Jayapal, former Multnomah County Commissioner. Michael Jonas, Principal Attorney and owner of Rational Unicorn Legal Services. And Eddie Morales, currently Gresham City Councilor. Welcome to all of you. Well, let's begin this debate with the opening statements, and we'll go down the line in the following order. The opening statements will be delivered from here at the podium. I'll step aside for those. I ask that each candidate, after they give their opening statement, the next candidate wait until that first candidate sits down, and then get up and come up and make your opening statement, just so we don't have people running into each other. Let's begin the debate with the opening statements, and we'll go down the line. First of all, Maxine Dexter will begin with your opening statement.
I never know when I'm going to need my glasses, so thank you. My name is Maxine Dexter. I'm a physician, mom, and Oregon State Representative here in Portland. As a pulmonologist and critical care physician, I've spent over 2 decades listening to the people of CD3, looking at science and finding solutions to improve their lives. Caring for people is my life's work, and finding solutions to problems is what I do. I see firsthand how many Oregonians are struggling to live healthy lives because of bad policy. I see it when I'm letting a parent know that their child has died of an overdose. I see it when I have to take care of a diabetic in crisis because they can't afford their insulin, or when I'm helping an unhoused person who has nowhere to recover after I've cared for them in the hospital. We can solve these problems if we have experts in the room, people who know the science and actually listen. But politicians often care more about making points than making plans. That's why I ran for the Oregon State Legislature, because I know we can do more to help people. I know I can do more, and I have. Since joining the State House, I led the charge to successfully secure the strongest abortion protections in the country, pass historic investments in housing, helping address our current crisis, helped reverse Measure 110 with a treatment focus, prioritizing public safety and public health, closed loopholes on our firearm loopholes in the firearm laws that put our kids at risk, and negotiated the tools that the Portland police needed in 2021 to intervene when our businesses and our communities needed them. Look, I'm not naive about the task at hand. I know that right-wing extremism is threatening our civil rights as well as our security and our democracy. But that's why we must elect a proven leader, someone who has shown that they know how to listen, lead, and get things done, and especially doing that in a divided government. That's what I've done for 2 decades as a physician caring for patients in CD3, as the chair of the board of directors at the largest physician group in Oregon, and as a mom determined to leave our children a better world. Thank you so much.
Our next opening statement comes from Mr. Eddie Morales.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eddie Morales, and I'm a Gresham City Councilor, where I've gotten to serve there for the last 6 years. And I just want to share a little bit about my background, because I'm also a small business owner, had my business for over a decade now, with my husband, Hugh Harris, here. But my story really starts with my mother, who came to this country in the trunk of a car, and my 8 siblings who came to this country in the backseat of strangers' cars. And my mother made that sacrifice of putting her kids in other people's cars and then getting herself in their trunk because she believed in an American dream. And I think I'm the manifestation of that dream for her. We accomplished that with challenges. You know, when I was 6 years old, my mother moved us here to Oregon to flee domestic violence. And in the middle of the night, she asked my brother to drive us north. We landed in Woodburn, Oregon. And there she brought us up by taking care of farm workers' kids and feeding farm workers. Quickly, my mother learned that she could exchange childcare for a place for us to live. And so we moved around quite a bit, sometimes living in people's living rooms, sometimes in an extra bedroom. But I went to elementary school here at Martin Luther King Elementary. I went to Tubman Middle School and then eventually graduated from Madison. I was the first in my family to graduate high school and the first to go to college. I've experienced 2 brothers who died to gun violence, and a sister who has died to opioids here, who worked on an assembly line and blew out her shoulder, was prescribed opioids, and passed away 4 years ago. When I went off to college, my mother went to Mexico to be with my dying grandmother. She got a 10-year ban for overstaying, and died 3 months before she was allowed to come back. I share all of those stories because those have been the motivations for me about why I get up every day, and I try to ensure that I'm passing public policy and making changes so that no other family, none of you in this room, ever have to experience what I've gone to. 25 years ago, I made the commitment that I was going to work on these issues. Anyways, I look forward to talking more. I apologize, Ken.
Thank you very much. Next will be Sushila Jayapal for her opening statement.
Good morning, everybody. Sushila Jayapal. I came to this country when I was 16 years old to go to college. And I'll be honest, when I landed on the East Coast as a 16-year-old, I'm not sure I knew that Portland existed, let alone where it was. But I have now lived here for 30 incredible years. I've raised 2 amazing children in this district, practiced law, first as a litigator and then as general counsel for Adidas America, where I led its legal department. I've been a community leader here, serving and leading on the boards of nonprofits like our local Planned Parenthood. And most recently, I've been a Multnomah County Commissioner, a position I stepped down from in November in order to run for Congress. It was a great privilege to serve in local office during some of the most challenging years we've ever faced, including through a once-in-a-generation, once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. But I'm running for Congress because we're at a pivotal time. We're at a pivotal time in this district, and we're at a pivotal time in the country. We have MAGA Republicans threatening our democracy every day, pushing policies that would hurt everyday Americans, like cutting Social Security and cutting Medicare, trying to roll back progress we've made on the existential threat of our time, which is climate change, and taking away rights we've taken for granted for decades, like the right to choose an abortion. And at the local level, we're facing crises of homelessness and addiction, and also the everyday challenges of a middle class that's losing ground, worried about being able to afford housing, worried about health care and child care, worried about aging with dignity, and worried about the existential threat of climate change. I'm running for Congress because I want to fight for this district's values and for the bold policies that I believe are crucial to addressing these challenges, policies that have to be implemented and resourced at the federal level in order to create lasting, sustainable change. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last opening statement before we get into the debate questions, Michael Jonas.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Michael Jonas. Listen, when we run for office, we're applying for a job. This is a job application. I want you to think about that. The difference between me and the other candidates on this stage is that they're coming off of an elected role. I'm not. I think that's the problem that we've had with politics, is we keep electing people who are politicians, endorsed by electeds, that then become politicians. And we're in a circular. We need real people who solve real everyday problems, right? So who am I? Some of you may know me, some of you may not. I'm actually a business attorney with an executive MBA. I'm the owner and principal attorney of a law firm called Rational Unicorn Legal Services. For almost 7 years now, I have offered community business law for everyone in the community. I have forged community partnerships with business chambers, startup incubators, mutual aid organizations, legislators, and big business. I have worked with every single type of person in the industry, from commercial tenant to commercial landlord and everyone in between. During the pandemic, I worked 60 to 70 hours a week. I was the guy who got the call, we have to shut our restaurant or coffee shop down in 3 days. What do we do? I was the guy on the ground giving mutual aid organizations liability waivers and advising them of their rights. I have been that person. I didn't see a business law firm that met the need. I didn't see a business law firm that talked about or did economic justice, building business and building community at the same time, which is what we are about in this district. So what did I do? I built my entire law firm from scratch. And I'm proud of that. I think it's an accomplishment. And if you don't think that's enough, this past year, in addition to graduating from the Leadership Portland class, I was one of Portland Business Journal's 40 Under 40, but I was also named by the SBA as the 2023 Small Business Champion of the Year for the state of Oregon.
Thank you. All right, let's get into our questions right now. This is the first question. Congress passed two of the Biden administration's biggest wins by making the historic infrastructure investments with the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act. As these dollars begin to flow into this district, what topics do you feel should be the primary focus of these tax funds and the focus of future transportation and infrastructure bills? What guides you when you advocate for transportation and infrastructure dollars. And Eddie Morales, will have you answer this question first.
Great. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. You know, I just want to say that I'm grateful that the Biden administration and Democrats were able to deliver this package that Republicans had talked about doing for a very, very long time. I think it's a major win for us. Obviously, we're expected to get over $4.5 billion of that in the next 5 years here in Oregon. And a lot of it will go to maintain what we already have, federal highways, bridges, dams. But I do think that this is an opportunity for us to make investments that help create good paying jobs and upgrade our electrical grid system, as well as create sustainable mass public transit. You know, I came out here probably the furthest from the east side to be with you all today. I see the congestion. I see that the ways that we could be improving these energy, the efficiency of transportation in our region, and I think that these investments are going to be a really great opportunity for us to center communities that have been impacted by this issue in the solution. So.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Morales. Ms. Jayapal.
Thank you. So one of my top priorities is shared prosperity. And when I think about infrastructure and transportation, those are obviously key to shared prosperity. They're key to jobs, and they're key to a growing economy. The way that I prioritize those issues is to say we need the federal government to focus on the things that will create the economy, not of today, not of yesterday, but of the decades to come. And so that means prioritizing climate change, green infrastructure, building out the energy grid, things like that. And then on transportation, I think it means tackling the really big challenges. And those are things like seismic upgrades. We know that this region is due for the big one, not if but when. And so getting the resources to seismically upgrade the interstate bridge, getting the resources to seismically upgrade the Burnside Bridge, which is a key corridor in the event of an earthquake. I was privileged to co-chair the Multnomah County Committee on upgrading the Burnside Bridge. Those are some of the priorities. And then on transportation, public transit. That addresses both climate change and helping people get to the jobs that we need them to be able to get to in order to create that shared prosperity.
Time. Mr. Jonas.
Hi, everybody. First, I'll say that in politics, we often say follow the money. When we have a giant infrastructure package like this or any giant bill, we need to be very intentional with where the funds are going. And so what this means is we need to look at the money and make sure that it's in the hands of the community leaders where they get to decide what the best infrastructure for their area is. And what that means in terms of transportation is a multimodal transportation, looking at walking, biking, looking at affordable housing, looking at climate and the climate economy, and seeing how all of these pieces fit together. I'm a systems thinker, and that's, I think, really important here, is we can't do a one-stroke, one-fits-all, drop a bunch of money into something. We've seen that done, and it has offended marginalized communities, not offended, but ruined, actually. We've also seen projects that go nowhere. We've also seen projects that have good intentions that really don't help people. So my biggest thing is to follow the money and to make sure that it gets in the right hands.
Time. Thank you. Ms. Dexter.
Great. Thank you so much. Infrastructure dollars are investments in our community, and they need to make sure that they are benefiting the community that they are invested in. We have not done that when we built I-5 and divided Albina. We are trying to recover from that still. And so one of the major investments we have in 2025 that still isn't certain of how this is going to happen is the cap over the Rose Quarter. We need to make sure that the I-5 bridge is built. That is also, I will tell you, not a settled issue, as most of you know, in the State House. That's going to be a major topic in 2025. And working with our federal delegation to make sure that we have the resources as well as the plan expedited and finished is paramount for the seismic stability and the economic development of this region. We also need to make sure that people can live, work, play, and learn in the community that they wish to choose or wish to live in. Housing is infrastructure. We need to make sure that housing and transportation are intertwined and thoughtfully planned for. We need to have 10-minute communities. We need to stop our dependence on fossil fuels, and we can do that with planful investments. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Our next question. Global tensions are becoming increasingly dangerous and more top of mind for the average American. Spotlighting the recent debates on foreign aid for Ukraine, the growing conflict and humanitarian fallout in the Middle East. What conditions, if any, would you require before voting on foreign aid packages, and how will you approach these foreign affairs issues when it comes to international affairs? Ms. Jayapal, you're the first for this question.
Thank you. Well, I think that foreign policy and domestic policy are intertwined, right? Our power and influence in the world depends on our credibility on those issues and on foreign policy issues. We need to make sure that whatever aid we provide to any of our allies is consistent with our values of democracy, our values of justice, our values of peace, because that consistency is critical to that integrity. I believe that in the case of Ukraine, we cannot stand by while countries invade other countries and violate international borders. We can't have an international system in which that happens. In the case of Gaza and Israel, I have been very clear that I believe the attack of October 7th was a terrorist attack, that Israel has the right to defend itself, and that the Netanyahu government's present course is unsustainable, is not consistent with international law, and will not lead to peace, safety, or security for anybody. And in all cases, our aid has to be conditioned on international law. That unconditional aid is not going to be a process that will sustain our standing in the world.
Time. Mr. Jonas.
Had a mic situation, thank you. First of all, I'll tell you that I come from a Jewish family. I have been to Israel, but I am pro-Israel. I am also anti-genocide. I have talked about this at length. I think defending oneself against what happened on October 7th was important, but I think the actions that are being taken by Netanyahu are genocidal. And I don't use that word lightly. I know that that is a heavy word. What I would do here is I would involve experts, because none of us up here, unless I don't know this, we're not military experts. And so that's what's most important. I do know, too, that there is the shooting and killing. There's also the humanitarian component. There are people who are starving. There are people who are dying right now as we speak who do not have clean water or food for their kids. We need to, as Americans, look at military spending entirely and see where we're spending money, what contracts we have, and we need to tie that aid to conditional things like, following human rights issues and following war protocols. At this time, we're not doing that. We're just giving money and not doing that.
Thank you very much. Ms. Dexter.
Thank you so much. I, like so many, am horrified by what is happening. And let me be clear, there already are restrictions on foreign aid, and they are applied across all applications of that aid. What we need to do is absolutely support a negotiated ceasefire to end the wars in Gaza, and we must end the violence, release all remaining hostages, and make sure that there is an enduring peace with a negotiated two-state solution. We can't decide for others what that looks like. We must lean in and support that and make sure that it is a durable two-state solution. Aid is already mandated to follow humanitarian laws, and we need to enforce those laws. Having laws that aren't enforced are not helpful. So it is our obligation, and we must continue to look at how that aid is used and maintain the stipulations and the protections that go with that aid.
Thank you. Mr. Morales.
The United States, I think, is a great example of a true democracy, and also one that has been a champion around human rights across the globe. And I don't want us to forget that. Also, I think we really need to rely on regional partners in an area to identify solutions that are specific to that particular region. I have had a chance to visit the West Bank. I've had a chance to visit Israel and meet with local leaders in the area. I think I want this war to end. I think what is happening is devastating. And as people who are Israeli or Palestinian are mourning their loss and seeking safety, I do believe that our leaders have an obligation to make sure that hostages are, released, that we're getting humanitarian aid, water, food, electricity to the region, and that we're ending and preventing civilian deaths. I also think we need to make sure that our leaders are focused on how we keep both Israelis and Palestinians who want to live in peace in the region.
Time. Thank you very much. Next question. Approximately 500,000 Oregon jobs, about 1 in 5, are dependent upon trade. The average Oregonian working in this sector earns 11% more than the average Oregon worker, and our state continues to be only one of 12 states with a trade surplus. The recent CHIPS Act has helped to bring billions of dollars into Oregon to modernize our semiconductor industry and help ensure Oregon and the nation stays competitive in that industry. A large part of the federal motivation for this bill was to decrease our reliance on foreign nations for semiconductor production and the components that are needed to manufacture them. President Biden and his challenger, former President Trump, have vastly different approaches on trade with China in particular. How will you handle international trade, and what views on U.S. trade relations with China would you be in favor of? Mr. Jonas, you take this question first.
First and foremost, I'm going to say this again, we have to follow the money. I'm going to also say we have to talk to the experts. We have done business with China for years. We have to be honest. We do not have in America a manufacturing class like we used to. We get steel from China, we get clothes from China, everything. So we have to be careful because we have to balance, do we want international relations and human rights violations? No, we don't. But we also need the things from the countries that we're talking about that are doing these things. So my approach to this is to hold the countries that we do business with accountable and to actually make sure that if they're going to continue doing business with America, that they have to follow fair trade laws, that they have to follow human rights. And the question is, well, how can I do that? I'm one person. I think it's because the American economy is still strong and other countries see us as that shining beacon on the hill. So we have the ability to make these relationships contingent, and that's what I would do.
Thank you very much. Ms. Dexter.
Thank you. Trade is vital for our businesses, our communities, and workers. We need to continue to make sure that the supply chain is resilient and as clean as possible, and U.S. workers must be centered in these agreements. Global trade agreements are opportunities, and we need to take those opportunities, but we also need to make sure that the trade agreements are enforced. What I would do is number one, close the de minimis loophole. It is a way for trade to undermine the sanctions, the taxes, fees, and inspections coming from China. It has to be closed. That's how fentanyl is getting into our country, and it is undermining local producers. I would work to make sure the trade agreements are enforced, uphold an international human rights and environmental protections, and hold countries that game the system accountable. And again, workers have to be centered in this at every step of the way.
Thank you. Mr. Morales.
Yep. In our city of Gresham, we are really proud to host Microchip. And Microchip's been in Gresham for about 20 years and started as a company that had about 20 employees. And in those 20 years grew to about 900. With the recent CHIPS Act, well, one, as a city, we had a responsibility to attract these federal investments from the CHIPS Act. And we actually provided over a $45 million tax abatement for the company to do about an $800 million expansion. The state also provided an $11 million investment in that. That attracted us the second grant from the CHIPS Act at about $78 million, helping to create 300 good manufacturing jobs in our region. The idea of working as municipalities, as a state, to incentivize these federal investments is something that we need to continue to replicate. It's how we move these businesses and these jobs back to shore. I would continue to do that. And I think that's really, that is our best defense, is reducing our, our expectation on foreign production and manufacturing.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jayapal.
Thank you. Look, there's no question international trade is vital to the Oregon economy, this district's economy, and the global economy. And the balance that needs to be struck, which Congressman Blumenauer, I think, has really done a masterful job of striking in general, is to both promote trade and to create a level playing field for the United States and other countries. And what that level playing field means is that we insist on and enforce global labor standards, human rights standards, and environmental standards. Doing that, setting those standards, both benefits American workers, district workers, and workers overseas, and lifts our entire economy, global economy. We also need to focus on building up our own industrial base. I mean, in terms of China in particular, which you asked about, they are simultaneously a necessary ally and a threat. And there's another balance that needs to be struck in terms of addressing the threat piece of that by building up our own industrial base, investing in our own industrial base, and creating those good jobs here, mitigating the threat to our supply chain here. So those are some of the balances that I would work to strike if elected.
Thank you very much. And for all of the candidates, you are limited to 1 minute in your statements. I've been letting people go a little bit over because I don't like to interrupt people mid-sentence, but just keep that in mind, candidates, as we move forward with this. This is the next question. The metro area has dedicated hundreds of millions of dollars in unspent local tax revenue to solve our region's homeless crisis. There's broad agreement that underdevelopment of housing is one of the root causes of this problem. Governor Kotek has made tackling this issue her #1 legislative priority. What will you do in Congress to reestablish and strengthen the federal government's partnership in developing and supporting middle and low-income housing to end our homelessness problem? What would you do to support and assist HUD and other federal agencies to refine and more quickly implement their goals of increasing housing production and sheltering the unhoused with the dollars that are already allocated to solve this problem? Ms. Dexter, this question goes to you first.
Thank you. People should be able to afford to live in the community of their choice, full stop. We have to make that possible. We have underinvested in housing for over 40 years, and it needs to change now. Housing is a right, and it is also what keeps our community safe. So the first thing that I would do is make sure that we expand affordable housing investments. This is vouchers, but it's also infrastructure changes. We need to think about housing as infrastructure, and that needs to create more revenue coming in to this area. We don't have more dollars out there. There's going to have to be some shifts in revenue to make this happen, and we need to do that. Government has done great things. This is the existential threat. We don't have people in the housing that they need to be resilient, and so investments are going to have to come there. We need LIHTC, we need the tax advantages, but that is not as effective as actually just investing in public housing, while we also invest in down payment assistance and expansion of workforce housing, which includes those starter homes that were in the 1940s possible. We need to make them possible again.
Thank you very much. Mr. Morales.
You know, I believe that everyone should have access to a high-quality, safe place to live. And I shared my story of not growing up with housing security. You know, on the Gresham City Council, I've been able to build over 400 affordable housing units. Multi-generational too, because people are starting to live with their parents, or their children are moving back in, or they have an aunt or an uncle. We've built 3- and 4-bedroom affordable housing units with matching IDA programs that allow people to start saving towards their first home purchase. I think we need to increase the supply of housing that we need for people at different stages of their lives. For those who are going out and getting their first apartment, to those who are starting to lay down a foundation and own home and build equity for themselves in generations to come, as well as those who are trying to downsize after retirement. And so I really think that at the federal government, we can make these large investments in building housing supply. The reason that the cost has gone so high is there's just not enough housing as well. And so I think increasing the supply is going to be a big priority of mine as well.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Jayapal.
Thank you for that question. There's no question we're facing a crisis here, right? And it's a crisis, I think we all know, that's been decades in the making, starting with disinvestment from housing at the federal level back in the 80s, and continuing with inattention at the state level until recently under the leadership of Governor Tina Kotek in housing as a fundamental challenge of our time. We all believe that people deserve housing and that housing is a human right. I think the federal government has a key role to play here in a number of ways. First, the federal government needs to get back in the business. It's not getting in the business for the first time. It used to be in the business of actually building public housing. We need to get back to that business. Second, the federal government needs to increase dramatically its investment in vouchers. Vouchers are basically long-term rent assistance, and the reality is that in a region like ours, some people will always need long-term rent assistance, and that is the ultimate solution to the problem of housing and homelessness for those people. And then third, we do need to invest in home ownership. In this country, owning a home is one of the main ways of building assets and building wealth. And so there's a lot that the federal government can do to incentivize home ownership, for example, giving grants to people to buy their first home.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jonas.
First, I agree with what a lot of folks have said, but I want to talk about how it's not just housing first. It's housing first, but it's not housing only. We have to double down on mental health resources. We have to double down on drug addiction, wraparound services, workforce training programs. We can't just build and put people in houses and think that they're going to be okay or they're going to be able to sustain. So we must not forget that these other things relate to housing. The other thing that I'll mention is the definition of affordable housing. It often doesn't actually meet affordability. We see that here in Portland. We have on MLK in Mississippi tons and tons of apartments that are built. Some of those studios are $1,600 to $2,000. So if we don't build affordable housing that's actually affordable, we have the same problem. We just continue to build. And then finally, what I'll say is we need to look at public and private partnerships. So housing organizations who build in the United States, the federal government needs to give them tax incentives to continue to build affordable housing across the nation.
Thank you very much. Our next question has to deal with taxes. The metro area has dedicated hundreds of millions of dollars in unspent local tax revenue to help solve our region's homeless crisis. Well, the Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act of 2024 was critical legislation negotiated by Senate Finance Chair Ron Wyden and the House Ways and Means Committee as well. It passed the House 357 to 70 with the unanimous support of the Oregon delegation. Specifically, the Portland Metro Chamber supports the research and development deduction, the EBITDA interest deduction, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, or amortization. Those of you who are in business know all about that. And the 100% bonus depreciation deduction, which are part of this legislative package. Do you support this legislation? And what portions of this bill would you renew, modify, or eliminate? If elected to Congress, how would you address such tax reforms? Mr. Morales, we start this question with you.
You know, I think that people in our community are feeling tax burden and very frustrated that we are paying so much in taxes, and a lot of the things that we're giving money to aren't being addressed, whether it's caring for our homeless community, caring for people with mental health or addiction services. You know, I think our county is the second most expensive county now, county in the country to live in. And when it was audited in September, there was over $130 million that was supposed to be spent in addressing some of these issues. That's very frustrating at the same time where people are having to really pinch pennies to figure out how they're going to pay their mortgages, how they're going to keep their businesses afloat, pay the next utility bill. You know, the truth, I think we need to figure out how we're lowering the cost for people to live, and exploring things like student loan forgiveness, better interest rates at the federal level. And we also need to focus on taxing billionaires and some of the wealthiest in this country, which we continue to not do. And they have a lot of the incentives that are supporting their ability to get out of paying taxes.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jayapal, same question.
Thank you. You know, we need, I think everybody would agree, we need a tax system that's fair, and that pays for the services that create the economy and supports all of the things that it takes to create shared prosperity, which, as I said, is one of my number one objectives. A fair tax system is one in which everybody pays their fair share, and in which those who can afford to pay more, pay more. And I'm talking about a progressive tax system, whether that's for individuals or for large corporations. We need to make sure that all of those taxes are being paid. And we need to make sure that the taxes are, the services that we provide are being effectively implemented. And here I'll say that I think there's a big gap between policy and implementation. And that while policy is often fairly hard to create, implementation is really difficult and challenging. And that's where, at the federal level, at the local level, we have a lot of work to do. There's policy at the federal level, for example, that affects how resources in our local community get spent. There are prioritization systems that are dictated by the federal government in terms of how we house people, just as one example. And
Time.
those create stumbling blocks for us, and we need to work on all of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jonas.
So the hard thing about taxes is we have competing interests, right? We need to have corporations or businesses pay a large percentage of taxes, or a fair percentage, so that we actually recoup that money, because we don't have that. And then we also need to, what we're not talking about in this tax equation, is make sure that owning a business actually pencils out. So if you have massive amounts of taxes and inflation cost and instability with staffing and a large commercial lease and an SBA loan you're trying to pay off and a commercial balloon payment for your landlord, how are you going to make this equation work? So when we talk about taxes, I'm for taxes. They say taxes and death are the only two things that are certain. But what I'm not for is this, kind of like Eddie indicated, continually adding more and more taxes onto the backs of ordinary people and onto the backs of small business owners. That is not the answer.
Thank you very much. Ms. Dexter.
Yeah, thank you. So to answer the question, I support the legislation and would absolutely do that. The research and development deduction is a major one for this region, and we need to continue to support our development here in this state. The CHIPS Act, what that was an amazing investment, and it also leverages our values. A budget is a values document, so making sure that we have on-site childcare and that there's incentives to do that. We need to use our tax deductions in a way that helps move us forward in a progressive way. I also agree, I support progressive taxation, but I want to make sure that our money's being used wisely. Government is not transparent and accountable. I ran a $800 million business as the chair of the board, and what I saw when I first got into office is that no business would ever run itself the way our government runs itself. We need to do better with our funds. We also must decrease our deficit and live within our means. We're not doing that right now. So government needs to invest in development of progressive values, and we do need progressive taxation without question. But we also need to make sure that our dollars are being used for good and that we're showing our work so that we can check it. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next question involves the climate of American politics right now. American politics have become increasingly divisive, contentious, and at times over the past decade, we've even seen political violence. We've seen that in Portland. What would you, as a freshman member of Congress, do to help heal the growing polarization of American politics? How will you stand up against violence being used as a political tool and to protect democracy? Ms. Jayapal, we'll begin this question with you.
And I mentioned that shared prosperity was one of my top priorities. The other is climate change, and the third is ensuring a strong democracy and civil rights, because without that third, we don't get to the first two. It is absolutely critical that we stand up for our values. We are rooted in those values, and that is how I have lived my personal and my professional life. And at the same time, that we look for common ground where we can find it. But I want to be really clear, when we talk about the divisive state of politics today, it is not an both sides issue. There is one party that is unable to govern itself and unable to govern the country. There is one party that's rolling back democratic rights, voting rights, and abortion rights. There's one party that is responsible for much of the violence that Ken spoke about. So let's just be clear about that. That said, I have worked throughout my career to build bridges. Just last summer, I did an exchange with a county commissioner from Union County, Republican. We disagree on many things, including taxation and guns, third rails of American politics. I went out there for 4 days. He came to Multnomah County for 4 days. He showed me his place and why he loves his place.
Time.
And what he's working on. And I think that's the kind of approach that we need to take to build these bridges.
Mr. Jonas.
First of all, I'll tell you, I come from a conservative home, okay? And I'm a progressive Democrat. So I have talked to and worked with Democrats, or not Democrats, Democrats and Republicans and independents and people of every type my whole entire life, both personal and professional. I believe that there are common grounds and common interests. I'm also a trained mediator. And if we can find people who share common interests, like safety and security and economic prosperity, then we can actually talk to them about anything. Granted, as Sushila indicated, we have a party or the other party that has doubled down on hate and conspiracy and the normalization of alternative facts. And so the question is, how do you stand up to these folks? The answer is you have to figure out who wants to work with you and how you can negotiate with them. And the answer is, I don't know if I can tell you that Marjorie Taylor Greene or whoever is going to, Lauren Boebert are going to be best friends with me. Will I have coffee with them? Sure. Will I try to find common interests with them? Sure. What I won't do is continue in this sort of hating trans people, hating gay people, banning books,
I have to cut
treating
you
women
off.
with disrespect.
I have to cut you off there because of time. Ms. Dexter.
Yeah, thank you. I absolutely believe in the fundamental power of our democracy, and we are undermining our democracy right now with the threat of electing Donald Trump, and that is the number one thing that we need to galvanize behind. We need to support our democracy, and this is not Republicans versus Democrats in parts of the world. I've seen it in our chambers in the House. There is a lot of political polarization, absolutely, but there's also a lot of people there who want to get good work done. And what we need to do is make sure that we're aligning behind our values and supporting our democracy and making sure that threats are not supported. And Donald Trump, make no mistake, is an enormous threat. He has said what he wants to do to our democracy. We should believe him. What I've done is pass legislation in a bipartisan fashion. I have been renowned for working with other people, treating them with respect and finding solutions. And that's what we're going to have to do. We have to show up and make sure that we're working together. This is absolutely a fundamental problem. We need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We need to enact the For the People Act. We have a lot of work to do to secure our democracy, but first we need to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't win this election.
Mr. Morales.
Yeah, I think we have to protect our democracy and expand it. From the suffrage movement to the civil rights, voting has been the thing that has helped us transform this country and the policies that guide us. Those have been under attack. The Voting Rights Act was, pulled back, so we need to restore that. I got a chance to work with Stacey Abrams for 10 years to do work in Georgia to register people to vote, and we've seen how that changed the trajectory of that. I worked with Desmond Meade in Florida to restore voting rights for 1.5 million returning citizens in Florida. And in Arizona, I worked to get Latinos and immigrants to register to vote. And they were able to repeal back show me your paper laws and get rid of Joe Arpaio. We have to expand and protect the right to vote and make sure that people have access to do that. That's how we can change policy. That is how we change people who are in leadership. And those fundamental rights of voting are really under attack and have been rolled back since the Trump administration.
Thank you very much. We're now moving into the part of our morning where we're going to allow the candidates to make their closing statements. We'll go back to 2 minutes for those closing statements, and looking forward to hearing how they wrap up this debate. We will start with Michael Jonas for the closing statement. You have 2 minutes.
So as I said in my opening, this is a job application. I'm going to be real with you. All four of us, as you've noticed, we all pretty much agree on most things. We're all what I call cute and progressive. But who is the best fit for this job? This is a job that not just requires knowing issues, this is a job that requires knowing the industries and knowing how the industries in District 3 work together. Now, you may be thinking the folks on stage besides me have gotten endorsements from electeds. They're coming off of an elected role, and we appreciate those endorsements. Where are my endorsements from? My endorsements are from community leaders of every type. The executive director of Pride Northwest, who organizes the Pride Parade, the executive director of Music Portland, the Live Events Coalition, Food and Beverage Incubator Startup Program managers. Who else? Portland Gay Men's Chorus, the Gay Chamber executive director, the executive director of the Black Chamber. So I tell you this because we can have the same, we can have status quo politics, we can have electeds taking on additional elected roles, and we would all do a great job. But the question really is who is going to survive the halls of DC? Who is going to be a deal maker and a negotiator? Who is going to be able to stand up to Mike Johnson? Who is going to be able to talk to big ag, big pharma, big oil, big tech? I will remind you, I am not just a business attorney, I have an MBA. I'll also tell you that I'm the youngest of the candidates on stage. I'm 39. Now, with age does come wisdom, but I remind you that part of this job will be inspiring a youth that graduated during the pandemic. This youth has to be inspired to be part of this economy where they've been told that they can't afford a house, the world is coming to an end, and they won't be able to afford college. I think I'm that person. I'm the best fit.
Thank you very much. Ms. Dexter, you are next.
Thank you for having me and for having this conversation. I'm confident my unique blend of professional experience and personal experience will make me the best candidate for this. I know I will get things done for the people of CD3. My campaign is built on a career of listening and caring for our community and using my proven skills in consensus building and leadership, as well as pragmatic problem solving to be effective when we need to get lasting policy change passed. My why is I'm a caregiver, and I want to make our country, I want to leave it better than when I found it. We have a lot of work to do for that to be true. I also want to be sure that our children have the same opportunities that I had. I'm first in my family to go to college. I come from a working class background, and that was only possible because of affordable higher ed, good public schools, and good quality jobs. As a physician, my experience as well as a state representative, getting hard things done. I've also been a healthcare business leader. I know where the money is, and I know how to get it out of healthcare. I'm the only candidate who has been a lawmaker and has proven that I can get hard things done and do it collaboratively, working with others. This is an important, influential seat. And due to its strong Democratic voters, you have a lot of capability to lead courageously from the seat. We need someone who is not only progressive, but is courageous and will lead with their values. And I have proven that I can do that. So ultimately, when you go to the voting box and when the voters of CD3 go, I want them to think about whether they hope that the person they're voting for is going to do a good job, or whether they've proven that they're going to do a good job. And I'm the only person in this role who has done that. Congress is not working. We need to make it so. I am endorsed by a lot of folks, including Governors Kitzhaber and Kolongoski, former speakers, Treasurer Tobias Reed, over 20 legislators, the National Organization for Women, and Everytown for Gun Safety. And I hope I'll be endorsed by you. Thank you.
Mr. Morales, your closing statement.
You know, I had a chance to share a little bit about my upbringing with you all, and through the questions, I was able to point to really specific things that I've been able to do around our economy, around housing, and I wanted to do that on purpose because I wanted you to understand what motivates me, and also to show you that I'm not somebody who just talks about getting things done. I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm not new to this work. I got to live in Washington, D.C. right after school and helped to pass the Affordable Care Act, which I think is the largest piece of policy anybody probably on this stage has worked on. I also helped to craft the DREAM Act, and then which ended up becoming DACA. So I know how to get things done in D.C. and how to work with more moderate bodies of governance. You know, Gresham, unlike Portland, is a little bit more moderate, and we, I think, represent other parts of this district, and I've been able to get things done there. When I worked on the Affordable Care Act, I was assigned the states of Tennessee, North Carolina, Missouri, and Ohio. Really easy places to work, places that didn't really believe in Medicaid expansion, and I was able to move members of Congress in these places to support the Affordable Care Act. 25 years of experience is what you get with me. I'm the most experienced elected official in terms of I'm on my 6th year as well. And I have the broadest coalition of people supporting me, from the Oregon Education Association, you know, to people who are in real estate and business community, because I believe that it takes coalitions to get things done. And I think it takes a broad set of ideas and perspectives and leaders coming to a table to solve problems. And I think that we need to focus on real concrete improvements in the lives of people, and not fan-flaming and not seeking celebrity. And that's exactly the kind of person you're going to get with me. Someone who's progressive, but someone who's pragmatic and knows how to get things done. Thank you.
And Ms. Jayapal.
Thank you so much for hosting us here and for joining us on this early Thursday morning. Residents of District 3 have an important choice to make on May 21st, and there are some real differences here. I am the strongest progressive in this race on a range of issues, and here's what that means to me. The word progressive is used a lot of different ways. What that means to me is that I will fight for big policies that will create real change. On health care, I am an unabashed supporter of Medicare for All, which will provide universal single-payer health care. We need to change our broken health care system, not tinker at the edges. On climate, my stance on moving away from fossil fuels and my leadership on clean air has earned me the endorsement of every single environmental organization that has endorsed in this race, from the Sierra Club to the Sunrise Movement, speaking of young people. On civil rights, I've been out front on abortion, one of the foremost issues for D3 voters. I served on the Planned Parenthood board when we became the first Planned Parenthood clinic in the country to offer medication-assisted abortion. And I have shared publicly my own abortion story in order to advocate for that as an essential freedom for every single person in this country. And in one of the most prominent foreign policy issues of our time, I am the candidate who has earliest and most consistently called for a ceasefire in Gaza. Second, I have a wide range of experience that I'll bring to bear on all of the issues and aspects and facets of the job of being a congresswoman. My experience as a lawyer, my experience in the business sector, my experience as a nonprofit leader, and most recently, my experience as a local elected official. And finally, I have the broadest and most diverse coalition of support from community leaders in the district, people who've worked with me for the 30 years that I've spent here and know my leadership. That coalition will be essential for understanding the needs of our constituents, all of them, and for delivering the policies and the resources that will meet those needs. Thank you again so much for having us here.
And thank all of you for being here to witness this debate. Please give these candidates another round of applause. I'd like to reiterate what Andrew said at the beginning of this session today, that it does take guts to stand up, put yourself in front of the electorate, and run for office, especially during this political year. It is very likely that one of these candidates will be your next congressman from CD3, mainly because CD3 is the most Democratic district of Oregon congressional districts. I don't think a Republican has represented diversion, even after the redistricting of CD3, since 1955. So we are looking forward to a very tight race. Again, these candidates are to be commended for stepping up for this race, especially to replace the revered Earl Blumenauer, who has done so much for this state. So to close off this debate and this session, I'd like to welcome back Andrew Hone, Portland Metro Chamber President, to close it all off. Andrew?
And let's give a big round of applause for Ken Boddy, who moderated this debate. We are so excited because between now and our next forum, we'll be bringing 140 Pacific Northwesterners from both Seattle and Portland to our nation's capital to advocate on behalf of this region as this shared prosperity agenda between the two states. The Pacific Northwest congressional delegation, both in the House and the Senate, is an extremely important delegation and, frankly, extremely powerful at this moment in time. So we are so pleased to be doing that together as a unified community between the Puget Sound and between the Portland region. So we look forward to that and maybe seeing one of you next year. With that, I do want to thank once again Alaska Airlines, the Portland Tribune, George Fox University, and U.S. Bank, and to all of you for being here and for all of you for promising me that you'll vote. So with that, have a great day, and please spend time with the candidates. Thank you so much.